Have you ever bought something you didn't really need, signed up for something you weren't sure about, or said yes to someone, only to wonder later, why did I do that? You weren't tricked. You weren't hypnotized. But something happened in that moment, something invisible. And that something is what this book is all about. Influence. The Psychology of Persuasion is like a flashlight in the dark. It reveals the hidden forces that shape our decisions every single day, forces that most of us don't even realize are at play. Written by Dr. Robert Cialdini, this book isn't just a collection of ideas, it's a journey into the secret psychology that powers human behavior. Robert Cialdini isn't your average professor. He's a scientist, yes, but he's also a detective of human nature. Back in the early 1980s, he started noticing something strange. People around him, friends, colleagues, even strangers, were constantly being persuaded. Not just by logic, not by facts, but by something else. Something subtle. Something powerful. He wanted to understand why. What made people say, yes, when they really meant, maybe? What made them comply, agree, follow? So instead of just doing experiments in a lab, Cialdini did something wild. He went undercover. He became a customer, a buyer, a trainee at marketing firms, car dealerships, telemarketing companies. He infiltrated the real world to study persuasion from the inside out. What he discovered was eye-opening, and honestly, kind of unsettling. There are patterns behind persuasion. Specific triggers. And once you understand them, you'll see that they're being used everywhere. In advertising. On social media. In sales. At the grocery store. Even in your own home. The book was first published in 1984, but here's the crazy part. It might be even more relevant now than it was back then. Think about today's world. Endless scrolling, viral trends, influencers, pop-up ads, political campaigns, limited time offers, and algorithm-driven feeds. We're not just being influenced once in a while, we're being targeted constantly. Our attention is pulled in 1,000 directions. Our decisions, what we buy, who we follow, how we vote, are being shaped before we even realize it. And that's where Cialdini's work becomes pure gold. Because this book doesn't just teach you how others use persuasion, it teaches you how to spot it, how to understand it, and if you want, how to ethically use it yourself. Because persuasion isn't bad. In fact, it's everywhere in normal life. Teachers use it to motivate students. Parents use it to guide their kids. Leaders use it to inspire teams. If you know how to use it well, persuasion becomes a tool, not a trick. So, what exactly does this book give you? It breaks down 6 core principles that explain why people say yes. And once you understand them, it's like getting a backstage pass to human behavior. You'll notice things others miss. You'll hear a pitch or read an email and instantly recognize, they're using that principle. You'll become more aware, more intentional, and honestly, harder to fool. But let's be clear, this book isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding. It's about learning how people work. And when you understand how people work, everything changes. You communicate better. You build trust faster. You get your ideas across more clearly. Whether you're in sales, marketing, leadership, or you're just someone who wants stronger relationships, this book is a game changer. So get ready. Because this isn't just a guide, it's a reveal. A reveal of the hidden levers that move us, the invisible buttons that get pushed every day. You'll never look at a commercial the same way. You'll start noticing the signs, the little nudges, the language, the timing. And instead of being swayed unconsciously, you'll finally be in control. This is influence, the psychology of persuasion. And once you step into this world, you'll start seeing everything, everyone, differently. Let's start with Chapter 1, Weapons of Influence. Before you learn how persuasion works, you have to understand why it works. And that's exactly where Robert Cialdini begins. This chapter is like the wide-angle lens. It zooms out so you can see the full picture before diving into the individual persuasion principles. It introduces us to what Cialdini calls weapons of influence. Now, the name sounds intense, like something out of a spy thriller, but it fits. These tools, when used skillfully, can cut through resistance, bypass logic, and create instant compliance. They're psychological triggers, automatic responses people give without thinking. And once you understand these triggers, you'll realize just how often we're all operating on autopilot. Cialdini begins with a powerful idea. Human beings are hardwired to take shortcuts. We're busy, overloaded, constantly making decisions. So instead of carefully analyzing every situation, we develop mental rules of thumb, quick judgments that help us respond fast. In psychology, these are called fixed action patterns. And even though they save us time, they also make us vulnerable. Here's an example Cialdini gives early in the chapter that sets the tone perfectly. A story about a mother turkey. Yes, a turkey. Sounds funny, but hang in there. Turkeys are loving mothers. But interestingly, they care for their young based on a single trigger, a specific sound their chicks make, a high-pitched cheep cheep. If a baby turkey makes that noise, she'll nurture it. If it doesn't, no matter how much it looks like her baby, she might reject it or even attack it. That sound is the trigger for her automatic mothering behavior. Now here's where it gets wild. Researchers took a stuffed polecat, a natural predator of turkeys, and put a tiny speaker inside it that played the cheep cheep noise. Guess what happened? The mother turkey accepted it, nuzzled it, took care of it, even though it looked like an enemy. When they turned off the sound, she attacked it immediately. That's how strong the trigger was. Now you might be thinking, okay, but we're not turkeys. True. But Cialdini shows that humans have these same kinds of automatic responses, just more complex and more socially driven. Think about it. You see a long line outside a restaurant and immediately assume it must be good. Someone tells you an item is limited edition, and suddenly you want it more. A person in a white lab coat tells you something, and without realizing it, you trust them more. These are mental shortcuts, and they're running in the background all the time. Cialdini calls these shortcuts the click where responses. Click the right button and where the behavior just rolls out. No thinking. No awareness. And that's exactly what makes them so powerful and so dangerous. Because in the hands of a skilled persuader, especially one who knows how to trigger these responses, you can be led to say yes before you even realize it. That's what makes these tools weapons. But here's the twist. Cialdini doesn't just demonize these tools. He shows us that they're actually necessary. In a world flooded with information and decisions, we need shortcuts. If we didn't have them, we'd be paralyzed. The problem isn't the shortcuts, it's when people use them against us, to push us into choices that aren't in our best interest. This chapter also hints at what's coming next, 6 specific weapons of influence. These are the persuasion principles that tap into our hardwired behaviors: reciprocation, commitment, and consistency, social proof, liking, authority, scarcity. Each one is like a psychological lever. And when someone knows how to pull that lever, they can move people fast. Cialdini also points out something critical here. Most people who use these tools aren't evil masterminds. Some are just professionals doing their jobs: salespeople, marketers, fundraisers, advertisers. They've learned what works, often through trial and error. But there's a fine line between influence and manipulation. And your ability to tell the difference is what gives you back your power. So to wrap this chapter in a nutshell, but with all its weight, here's what it's really saying: we are creatures of habit. We respond to certain cues automatically. And when someone understands those cues, they can steer our behavior, influence our choices, and shape our lives. But once we become aware of those cues, once we learn what they are, we don't just protect ourselves, we gain the tools to become more effective, more persuasive, and more conscious communicators in everything we do. That's the power of knowing the weapons of influence. And now that the curtain's been pulled back, it's time to explore them, one by one. Next is Chapter 2, Reciprocation, the old give and take, and take. Imagine this. You're walking through the mall. A friendly woman hands you a small cup of a new smoothie to sample. It's free. She smiles, says, "Let me know what you think." You sip it. Tastes pretty good. As you thank her and start to walk away, something weird happens. You feel this little tug inside, like you owe her something. Maybe you didn't plan on buying anything, but now, you almost feel bad leaving empty-handed. And just like that, you find yourself buying a $6 smoothie you didn't even want. That right there is reciprocation in action. This chapter explores one of the most deeply rooted human behaviors, something built into nearly every culture, every generation, every society on Earth. The rule is simple. If someone gives us something, we feel obligated to give something back. It's not just social etiquette, it's hardwired. Cialdini explains that this rule has helped humans survive for thousands of years. Long before modern civilization, early humans had to rely on each other. If someone shared food or helped in a time of need, that generosity created a social bond, and the expectation was you returned the favor. If you didn't, you were seen as selfish, a freeloader, someone not to be trusted. And this rule still runs deep today. In fact, it's so strong that it can be used against us, even with the smallest gestures. One of the most famous examples Cialdini shares comes from a real-life experiment with the Hare Krishna movement. Back in the 1970s and 80s, the Krishnas were struggling to raise money through donations. Then they discovered a brilliant, and slightly sneaky, strategy. At airports, train stations, and busy public places, they began walking up to strangers and handing them a small flower or a book. They insisted it was a gift. "No charge," they'd say, smiling. Then, seconds later, they'd ask for a donation. And guess what? People gave. Not because they were deeply moved by the cause, but because they felt they had to give something in return. The flower? Most people didn't even want it. Some threw it away the moment they turned the corner. But it worked. Because the rule of reciprocation kicked in. They were given something, so now they had to give back. And businesses do the exact same thing. Think about those. Free trials, free samples, or limited time bonuses that come with a purchase. It's not just generosity, it's strategy. If they give first, they know the rule of reciprocation puts pressure on you to say, yes. Here's where it gets even more clever. Sometimes the return favor doesn't have to be equal, it can be bigger. That's right. You could receive a tiny gift and feel pressured to give something way more valuable in return. And that's where this rule becomes a true weapon of influence. Cialdini shares another fascinating tactic called the rejection then retreat technique, and this one is seriously powerful. Let's say someone asks you for a huge favor. "Can you volunteer 10 hours a week for this charity?" You politely decline. That's too much. Then they say, "Okay, no worries, could you at least come help out just one Saturday?" Now suddenly, that second request feels reasonable. Even though you were never planning to say yes to anything. Why? Because the first big request made the second one seem small. And also, because they retreated. You feel like you should now compromise too. That's the rule of reciprocity, in motion. It's not just about gifts. It's about behavior. When someone backs down or adjusts for you, your instinct is to meet them halfway. That's why this tactic is often used in negotiations, sales, and even everyday conversations. But here's the most important part of this chapter. Awareness is protection. When you recognize these moments, you get your power back. If someone gives you something, it's okay to be grateful. But you don't owe them your time, your money, or your attention unless you choose to give it. Cialdini encourages us to draw the line between genuine kindness and strategic manipulation. Just because someone gave you a gift doesn't mean you're trapped. In the end, Cialdini isn't telling you to avoid giving or receiving. He's reminding you that reciprocation is a beautiful, powerful thing when it's authentic. But when it's used to push you into decisions you wouldn't normally make, you need to step back, take a breath, and ask, am I giving back because I want to, or because I feel like I have to? And just like that, you've taken the first step toward resisting one of the most common forms of psychological persuasion in the world. You got it. Now we're moving into one of the most fascinating and sneaky powerful forces in persuasion: commitment and consistency. This is the chapter that makes you stop and think, "Whoa, I've definitely fallen for this before." Let's get into it. Chapter 3: Commitment and Consistency, Hobgoblins of the Mind. There's something about us humans. Once we commit to something, an idea, a decision, even just a statement, we want to stay consistent with it. Even when that decision turns out to be wrong. Even when it no longer serves us. Why? Because changing our mind makes us uncomfortable. It feels like weakness. Inconsistency is awkward. But staying consistent? That feels strong. Smart. Stable. And that instinct, to stay in line with what we've already said or done, is what makes this next principle of persuasion so powerful. Commitment and consistency. Cialdini opens this chapter with a quote by Emerson that really nails the whole theme. "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." In other words, we often stick to things just to stick to them, even when it's foolish. And persuaders know this. They know that if they can get you to make a small commitment, just a toe in the water, they can pull you in deeper, step by step, without you ever realizing what's happening. Here's one of the most eye-opening examples Cialdini shares. In a neighborhood experiment, researchers asked homeowners to put a giant, ugly sign in their front yard that said, "Drive carefully." Not surprisingly, almost everyone said no. It was too much. But here's the twist. A few weeks earlier, a different group of homeowners had been asked to put a tiny sticker in their window about the same cause. Nothing intrusive. Just a small, visible show of support. Most people said yes, no big deal, right? But when that second group was asked later to put the giant ugly sign in their yard, over 75% of them said yes. Why? Because they had already said yes to the small thing. And now, saying no to the bigger thing would feel inconsistent. They wanted to stay true to the image they had of themselves. "I'm the kind of person who supports safe driving." That's the trick. The initial commitment, even something small, shifts your identity. And now you feel the pressure to stay consistent with that identity. This is why salespeople, marketers, and even political campaigns often ask for tiny actions first. Sign a petition, take a quiz, download a free guide. Those little yeses open the door. And once that door is open, it's a lot easier to walk you toward the bigger ask: a purchase, a donation, a vote, a public statement. There's another brilliant technique Cialdini talks about in this chapter called the foot-in-the-door technique. It's simple. You ask for something small, get the person to say yes, and then follow up with a bigger request that's in the same direction. It works. Over and over again. Because once someone says yes, they start to feel committed. And if the second request is in line with the first one, it just feels natural to say yes again. Anything else would feel like going back on your word, even if no one's pressuring you. But here's where it gets even deeper. Public commitment is stronger than private commitment. Once you say something out loud, or even better, in writing, you're way more likely to stick to it. Why? Because now your reputation is on the line. You've told people, "This is what I believe. This is who I am." And now, if you go back on that, it creates discomfort. Doubt. Inner tension. That discomfort is what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, when your actions and your beliefs don't line up, and it starts to make your brain itch. So instead of changing your actions, you often change your beliefs to match what you've already said or done. This is how people go deeper into scams, into bad relationships, into toxic workplaces. Not because they're stupid, but because once they've invested time, money, or emotion, it's hard to back out. They want to believe they made the right choice. And backing out would mean admitting they were wrong. That's not easy. But Cialdini doesn't leave us in the dark. He shows us how to spot these patterns. How to be aware when someone is trying to use this principle to steer us into a corner. So here's the rule to protect yourself. Ask why. When you feel pulled to stick with something, pause and ask, am I doing this because it's right, or because I don't want to seem inconsistent? And when you want to influence others ethically, start small. Ask for small steps that align with their values. Let them say yes in a low-stakes way. Over time, that commitment grows stronger. And now you're not forcing anyone. You're just guiding them into a direction they already started moving toward themselves. Cialdini's big message in this chapter is powerful. Consistency isn't bad. It's actually a virtue. But it has to be conscious. When we act out of blind habit, just to avoid discomfort or appear stable, we give up our freedom to choose. But when we commit based on awareness and values, that's where real influence lies. So the next time you find yourself saying yes, take a second and ask, am I saying yes because I mean it, or because I already said yes before? Because awareness, that pause, is the most powerful tool you've got. Alright, let's keep this momentum going. Now we're stepping into Chapter 4, Social Proof, and this one? It hits hard. Because chances are, this principle is guiding your behavior every single day, without you even realizing it. Picture this. You walk into a new city, looking for a place to eat. You don't know the area, you don't know the restaurants. But on one side of the street, there's a cozy little restaurant with a line out the door. Across the street, another place, empty tables, quiet, barely anyone inside. 9 times out of 10, you're going with the first one, right? Why? Because you assume, if all those people are eating there, it must be good. That right there is the power of social proof, the idea that when we're uncertain, we look to other people to decide what's right. And Cialdini makes it crystal clear, this isn't just a casual observation. It's a deeply rooted survival instinct. From the time we're kids, we're taught to follow the crowd. In new or confusing situations, our brains don't want to waste energy trying to figure things out. So we take a shortcut. We look at others, what they're doing, what they're saying, how they're reacting. And we follow along. It's safe. It's efficient. And most of the time, it works. But here's the twist. That same shortcut can also be used to influence us, even when it leads us in the wrong direction. Cialdini dives into one of the most powerful examples of social proof with a story that's almost chilling, the bystander effect. In New York City, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was attacked late at night, screaming for help. Reports said dozens of neighbors heard her cries, saw what was happening, and did nothing. No one called the police. No one stepped in. Why? Because of diffusion of responsibility. Everyone assumed someone else would help. And because no one acted, each person looked to the others for cues. If no one else is reacting, maybe it's not that serious. Maybe I shouldn't get involved either. It's a brutal example, but it reveals something real and raw. In uncertain moments, we look around to decide how to behave. And if everyone's frozen, we freeze too. Now, marketers and persuaders don't use this principle in such extreme situations, but they use the exact same instinct. Think about all those messages you see. Bestseller. Over 10,000 customers love this product. People just like you are switching every day. Most popular choice. All of it is designed to trigger that same instinct. If all these people are doing it, it must be the right choice. Even laugh tracks on sitcoms are a form of social proof. Studies show people laugh more when they hear others laughing, even if the joke isn't funny. Wild, right? But here's something even more subtle. Similarity matters. We don't just follow anyone. We follow people who seem like us. That's why ads use actors who match your age, style, background. Why influencers who talk like you and live like you seem more trustworthy than celebrities. It's why online reviews, especially from verified buyers, feel more real than brand promises. If they're like you, their experience must be relevant to you too. And that's where this becomes not just a principle, but a weapon of influence. Cialdini shows that people will go against their own judgment just to match the crowd, especially in uncertain situations. He talks about experiments where people gave obviously wrong answers just because everyone else in the room did. Not because they believed the answer, but because they didn't want to stand out. They didn't want to be wrong alone. So how do we protect ourselves? Simple. Cialdini tells us to stop and think before following the crowd. Ask, are these people actually informed? Do they know something I don't? Or am I just copying them because I feel unsure? Because not all crowds are wise. Sometimes they're just confused together. And if you're trying to influence others ethically, lean into authentic social proof. Show honest reviews. Share real stories. Highlight real people. When others see that people like them have said yes, the resistance drops. Not because of manipulation, but because of connection. So let's bring it all home. Social proof is powerful because it gives us guidance. It's the brain's way of saying, let's not overthink this, let's do what others are doing. But unless you stop and ask yourself why you're following the crowd, you might end up going somewhere you never meant to. And in today's world, where everything's visible, everything's reviewed, everything's shared, that instinct is more active than ever. So next time you're about to make a choice, pause and ask, am I doing this because it's right for me, or because everyone else is doing it? That moment of awareness? That's how you take back control. Alright, let's keep the fire going. Because Chapter 5, Liking, the Friendly Thief, is one of the most surprising, sneaky, and honestly, kind of mind-blowing parts of the book. You're about to see how simply liking someone can mess with your ability to say no, even when you should. So let's dive in. Think about the last time you bought something because the salesperson was just so nice. Maybe it was a pair of sunglasses, a gym membership, skincare, even a car. You didn't really need it. Maybe you weren't even planning to buy anything. But that person? They were warm. Charming. Maybe they complimented your style, shared a laugh, made you feel seen. And so you said, yes. That's the power of liking. It's not logic, it's emotion. When we like someone, we're way more likely to say yes to them, even if what they're offering isn't that great. And in this chapter, Cialdini breaks down just how deep and subtle that power runs. So why do we like people? It's not random. There are specific, psychological reasons we're drawn to someone. And when those factors are present, our defenses drop, and our yes comes faster. Let's break it down. First, physical attractiveness. Yep. It's real. It's called the halo effect. When someone is attractive, we automatically assume they're smarter, kinder, more talented, even when there's no proof. It's not fair, but it's human. That's why advertisers use models. Why politicians try to look polished. Why the most charming influencers have flawless lighting. Because we're more likely to trust and agree with people we find attractive. Second, similarity. We like people who are like us. Whether it's shared interests, background, beliefs, or even the way we speak, if someone reflects a piece of us, we naturally lean in. Salespeople know this. Ever had someone say, "Oh, you're from Chicago? No way, me too." Even if it's small talk, it builds a bond. And once we feel connected, we start to trust. Third, compliments. You'd be shocked how far a simple compliment can go. Even when we know it's a tactic, we still eat it up. Cialdini tells us flat out, we're suckers for praise. A genuine or even not so genuine compliment can melt resistance, soften skepticism, and open the door to persuasion. Fourth, contact and cooperation. The more time we spend around someone, the more we tend to like them, especially if we're working toward the same goal. That's why team-building exercises, community service projects, and even shared struggles can build loyalty fast. Politicians often campaign side by side with citizens for this reason. It builds connection. Fifth, conditioning and association. Here's a subtle one. We like people, or things, that are associated with positive experiences. That's why brands spend millions sponsoring sports events or music festivals. If we're having fun, and their logo is right there beside us, the brain connects that good vibe to the brand. The same happens with people. If someone's always around when we're feeling good, we like them, even if they didn't do anything directly. Now, all of this seems harmless, until it's not. Because once someone knows these triggers, they can use them, not to build a real relationship, but to get something from you. Cialdini gives us one unforgettable example: Joe Girard, one of the greatest car salesmen in history. What was his secret? Every month, he sent thousands of greeting cards to past clients. Each one said the same simple thing: "I like you." That's it. No pitch. No push. Just a warm reminder that he was thinking about them. And people loved it. They kept coming back, again and again, because they liked him. But here's the deeper message: liking creates trust, and trust creates influence. When we like someone, we stop questioning their motives. We believe they're on our side. And that's when persuasion becomes effortless. So how do we protect ourselves? First, be aware. Ask yourself, do I actually like this offer, or do I just like the person? Second, separate the message from the messenger. If a friend recommends a product, a service, or a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, pause and check the facts. Just because you like them doesn't mean what they're saying is good for you. And third, if you're the one trying to influence others, be real. Build trust through authenticity, not tricks. Be warm. Be helpful. Be honest. Because when people like you and trust your message, that's where real connection and real persuasion lives. Cialdini doesn't say we should stop liking people. Not at all. He just wants us to understand what's happening underneath the surface. Because when you know how liking works, you can spot it, shape it, and make sure you're saying yes for the right reasons. So next time you're face to face with a friendly voice, a glowing smile, and an irresistible charm, pause for a second and ask yourself, is this someone I genuinely trust? Or is this the friendly thief? Alright, now we're heading into one of the most chilling and powerful principles of persuasion. This one doesn't come with a smile or a compliment. It doesn't need charm. It works with just one thing: power. Let's dive deep into Chapter 6, Authority, Directed Deference. Picture this: a man in a white lab coat tells another man to administer electric shocks to a stranger in another room, just because they answered questions wrong. The shocks start mild but get stronger. The stranger screams in pain, begs for the experiment to stop. But the man in the lab coat, calm and firm, says, "Please continue." And so, the shocks continue. This really happened. It was part of the Milgram experiment, a now infamous psychological study from the 1960s. And what it revealed shook the world. Ordinary people will follow orders, even when it means hurting someone, if they believe the person giving the order has authority. That's the heart of this chapter. Authority. We're wired to respect it, obey it, defer to it. From childhood, we're taught to listen to teachers, doctors, police officers, experts. And for good reason. Authority often does mean someone knows better. But that instinct to follow can be dangerous, especially when the authority is fake or misused. Cialdini shows how easily authority can override common sense. He shares another example. A nurse gets a phone call from a doctor she's never met. The voice tells her to administer a drug to a patient, double the maximum dose. She hesitates. The drug isn't even supposed to be available. But the voice is confident. He sounds like a doctor. He knows her name. So she prepares the injection, only to be stopped by a supervisor just in time. That wasn't a real doctor. It was part of an experiment. And over 95% of nurses in that study followed the same dangerous order. Why? Because authority changes how we think. It makes us switch from independent judgment to automatic response. We assume the person in charge must know best. Now here's the scary part. You don't even need real authority to pull this off. You just need the symbols of authority. Cialdini highlights 3 major ones. 1. Titles, whether it's doctor, professor, CEO, or expert. A title alone carries weight. People listen differently. They comply more quickly. Even when the title isn't earned, the impact is real. 2. clothes a lab coat, a suit and tie, a police uniform. These outfits tell our brains, this person is legit. In experiments, people were more likely to obey instructions or follow requests when the person was dressed professionally, even when what they were saying was ridiculous. 3. Trappings: luxury cars, expensive watches, big offices. They all signal status and success. People let fancy cars cut them off in traffic more often. They assume someone in a Rolex knows what they're talking about. It's unconscious, but it's real. Cialdini makes one thing clear. This isn't just about being gullible. It's about how deeply we've been trained to trust authority. It's how fake investment advisors get away with scams. How influencers convince people to buy untested health products. How fake doctors sell miracle cures online. They borrow the language, the look, the tone of authority, and our brains submit. But here's the turning point. Cialdini doesn't say we should reject authority altogether. That's not realistic or smart. True authority matters. Real doctors, real experts, real leaders can guide us, protect us, teach us. The danger isn't authority itself. It's unquestioned authority. So how do we protect ourselves? We ask questions. We pause. We double-check. Cialdini suggests 2 key things to look for when you're facing someone in a position of power. Is this person truly qualified? What's their track record? Do they have legitimate experience? Not just a title or a look, but actual substance. Are they being honest? Are they trying to help, or trying to manipulate? Are they giving you the full story, or just enough to get you to comply? Because once you ask those questions, the spell starts to break. You stop being a follower, and you start being a thinker. And if you want to be a positive influence, earn your authority. Don't fake it. Know your stuff. Share real value. Lead with clarity and integrity. Because when people trust your authority for the right reasons, they don't just listen, they believe. Let's bring it home. Authority can save lives. Or it can be used to control, confuse, and even harm. That's why the real power lies not in the person with the authority, but in how we respond to it. So the next time someone flashes a title, a uniform, or a confident tone, pause. Breathe. Ask the deeper questions. Because awareness is your strongest defense. And sometimes the most powerful word in the face of false authority is simply, why? Let's bring it home with a bang, because Chapter 7. Scarcity. The rule of the few is like a backstage pass to one of the most irresistible forces in human psychology. This is where we find out why. Limited edition, only a few left. Or, sale ends tonight. Makes us lose our minds and act fast, sometimes too fast. This is Chapter 7, Scarcity. The rule of the few. Have you ever noticed how something becomes way more attractive the second it's about to disappear? It could be the last pair of sneakers in your size. A final call on a flight deal. A product suddenly labeled sold out. You weren't even planning to buy it, but now you have to. That's the scarcity principle in action. And Cialdini breaks it down so clearly. We want what we think we can have. The less available something is, the more valuable it becomes in our minds. Not because it's actually better, but because it feels like it's slipping away. At the core of this instinct is something primal: loss aversion. Our brains are wired to avoid loss even more than they're wired to seek gain. So when something becomes scarce, when there's a chance we might miss out, we feel an urgency to act. Now here's where it gets sneaky. Because this instinct? It's incredibly easy to trigger. All a marketer has to do is say, only 3 left in stock. Offer ends at midnight. This product won't be restocked. Even if there's plenty of supply, just suggesting that access is limited can light a fire under us. And the more uncertain the situation, the stronger the effect. Cialdini gives us some fascinating examples, from cookie experiments to Black Friday chaos. In one study, people were offered cookies from 2 jars. One jar had 10 cookies. The other had just 2. The cookies were exactly the same. But guess which ones people rated as tasting better, worth more, and more desirable? Yep. The ones from the nearly empty jar. Why? Because our minds interpret scarcity as a signal of value. Fewer cookies must mean they're more popular, more special, more worth it. But the power of scarcity doesn't stop at products. It affects information too. Cialdini talks about censorship. When people are told that a piece of information is restricted, banned, or unavailable, their desire to see it skyrockets. Think of banned books, leaked footage, or what they don't want you to know headlines. It doesn't even matter what the content is, just the fact that it's hard to access makes people crave it more. And it gets even more intense when you add competition to the mix. Think about auctions, or ticket drops, or limited product drops. When we know others are also trying to get what we want, scarcity combines with social proof and competition to create a perfect storm. Our fear of missing out turns into panic buying, impulsive clicking, or saying yes before we've even thought it through. Now here's the most important part: scarcity makes us emotional. It narrows our focus. It makes us stop thinking and start reacting. We don't ask, "Do I actually want this?" We ask, "Can I get it before someone else does?" And that's where the danger lies. Cialdini warns, scarcity can make us chase things we don't even need. It can cloud our judgment. It can push us into bad decisions, not because we were convinced by logic, but because we were afraid of loss. So how do we protect ourselves? Here's the move: step back from the rush. When something feels urgent, when the voice in your head says, "Buy now or regret it forever," that's your cue to pause. Ask yourself, do I actually want this? Or do I just want it because it might be gone? Would I value this the same if it were always available? Is this real urgency, or manufactured pressure? Because awareness is the antidote. The second you recognize the scarcity tactic, its grip weakens. And if you're on the other side, if you're persuading ethically, use scarcity honestly. Limited supply is fine, as long as it's true. Just remember, when you create urgency, you're steering emotions. So steer them with integrity. Let's bring it all together. Scarcity works because it taps into one of our deepest fears, missing out. But when you understand that fear, when you see it for what it is, you take your power back. So next time you see, "Only a few left, offer ends tonight," or "Get it before it's gone," pause, breathe, and ask, is this something I truly want? Or is it just the fear talking? Because in a world where urgency is manufactured daily, your calm mind is your greatest superpower. After all the pages, all the stories, and all the science, one thing becomes crystal clear: this book isn't just about persuasion. It's about power. The invisible power that moves us, guides us, nudges us, often without our permission, and without us even realizing it. Robert Cialdini didn't just write a book. He gave us a map. A map of the human mind, the shortcuts we rely on, and the instincts that drive us. He showed us that influence is everywhere. It's baked into our conversations, our relationships, our purchases, even our quiet thoughts when we believe no one else is watching. We're constantly making decisions based on cues we don't fully see. A friendly smile, a confident voice, a clock ticking down on a sale, a crowd doing something that feels safe to follow. And while we like to think we're logical, deliberate thinkers, the truth is, most of us are responding on autopilot. Because persuasion doesn't always scream. It whispers, and it sounds a lot like our own inner voice. Cialdini walks us through each of the levers that pull at our minds. He shows how the simple act of giving, even when it's manipulative, can spark the deep, almost guilt-driven need to give something back. How a small yes can snowball into a life-altering commitment, just because we want to stay true to who we think we are. How seeing others do something, even if it's wrong, can make it feel so right, so normal, so necessary. He exposes how easily we trust those we like, how we surrender to titles and uniforms without question, and how we chase the things we're told are rare, not because we need them, but because we fear losing them. But beneath all that insight, this book carries a deeper message. One that matters more now than ever before, in a world of fast decisions, constant marketing, and voices that fight for our attention every second. The message is this: we are not helpless. Influence is powerful, yes, but it's not absolute. Once you see it, you can resist it. Once you understand it, you can use it, not to manipulate, not to deceive, but to connect, to lead, to inspire. Cialdini doesn't ask us to reject influence. He asks us to wake up to it. Because the real danger isn't persuasion, it's blind persuasion. It's walking through life unaware of who's pulling the strings, and why. And once you open your eyes, once you start noticing the subtle tactics and hidden triggers, you reclaim something most people lose without even knowing it: your ability to choose, freely and fully. And that's what makes this book timeless. It's not just a toolkit for marketers or salespeople, it's a survival guide for the modern world. It empowers the quiet thinker, the curious learner, the everyday decision maker to stand in the storm of influence and say, "I see what's happening here, and I choose how I respond." So when you leave this book behind, don't just walk away with knowledge. Walk away with awareness. Carry it into every email, every ad, every offer, every conversation. Let it sharpen your vision. Let it strengthen your voice. Because the real power of influence isn't about getting others to say yes. It's about knowing when to say yes, and why. And maybe, just maybe, you'll take what you've learned and use it to build something better. To persuade with honesty. To lead with compassion. To influence with purpose. Because when you understand the psychology behind the yes, you don't just become harder to manipulate. You become someone who inspires it. That's the legacy of this book. And now it's yours. If you found this summary insightful and valuable, don't forget to show your support by subscribing to the Mindful Brief on YouTube. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this audiobook summary, share it with your peers, friends or family who might benefit from it, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. Your engagement helps us create more in-depth and valuable content for you. Stay tuned for more summaries, insights, and strategies to elevate your knowledge and career. Subscribe now and be part of the journey.